So why do you allow that? Hmm? Like, I have yet to receive an answer from anybody. Right? I mean, like I said, if I start asking questions, most of you are going to run out of answers very quickly, because it doesn't. Because none of this shit makes any fucking sense. Of course it doesn't. It's not meant to make sense. It's meant to make money, not make sense. Right? Why were the founders? Think about the type of men they were. Do you really think that the King of England wouldn't have offered every single one of them virtually anything that they wanted in the world? You know, to end this war and not cost a fortune, and not, you know, completely destroy their navy and everything. Like, what do you think? I mean, do you think the King of England would have offered those men anything they wanted? Of course he would have. Like, that's just common goddamn sense. Of course he would. Of course he would have offered them anything they could have pretty much asked for anything they wanted, and they probably and the King of England would have capitulated immediately to them, because it would have been cheaper, right? It's cheaper to buy off, you know, 50, 60 guys than it is to, just like we see right now. It's easier to control a few thousand mega corporations than it is to try and control 50 million independent small businesses, right? So, do you really think that those men couldn't have commanded anything they wanted? Of course they could have. Why did they choose not to? Why did many of them choose poverty? I bet you didn't know that. I talked about this a long time ago. If you look, these guys, most of them did not exactly go to their graves rich. You know, I mean, many of them did not. Why do you think they chose that? Because it was infinitely more valuable to them to be left alone and have self-direction. That was more valuable to them. It was more valuable to them to have freedom than beneficence. Okay? It was way more valuable to them. So, where are you at, America? Whoever's watching this, where are you at? How much is your freedom worth? I will submit to you that I don't think that, I would say that, again, 15% of the country, maybe 15% of the entire country would put their freedom and their liberty and you know, all of these other things, these things that have huge amounts of value at the top of the stack, you know, their freedom, their liberty, their faith, whatever it is, top of the stack, way above money and comfort. But it's only 15%. The 85% of you won't do that. For whatever reason. I don't know why. You know, this is when you have to ask yourself that question. I'm talking to kind of younger people, but I'm really talking to everybody. But younger people in particular, because I see your videos. You know, you don't think I don't see this shit? Of course I do. I see all this stuff. I see all you guys talking about we need to tax the rich and all this. Like, dude, no, you really don't need to just tax the rich. That's not the solution. The solution is to actually have a free market and let the rich go broke on their own, because they will. Usually by the second or third generation, they pretty much blow through whatever money they made. True story. And what is it? How's the saying go? Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Yeah. It's because usually the old man, the patriarch, goes out, works his ass off, saves a bunch of money, manages to make it big, kind of, and become, quote, rich. And usually by the 3rd generation, they pretty much piss it all away. Historically true, right? Right now we have a bunch of 4th generation trust fund kids that are staying rich by making everybody else poor. Not by inventing shit, not by curing disease, not by doing any of those things, but by keeping people impoverished, right? That's how things are working now. This is not the guy, the same thing as a guy who invents a cool product that people want to buy, and then he becomes rich by default. It's not the same thing. I did a whole video on that, you know, where I talked about that, the idea behind, rich by contrast. Where you're right, instead of actually doing something that benefits society, you're just creating more laws, so that way you can stay rich and make everybody else poor, so you can be rich by contrast. It's sort of like, you know, the hot girl that always has like 2 or 3, you know, middle of the road friends, so she can look hot by contrast. Women are evil to each other. It's just terrible. So anyway, yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing to think about. So if you wanted an opinion, give you my level, and you know me, I mean, I'm pretty level-headed for the most part. I mean, I have my moments, just like anybody else does. I'm just as human as anybody else. But if you wanted an opinion, I would say it like this: go back to the Constitution. Just go back to that. Tweak a few things. Just like tiny tweaks. Okay, don't overdo it. Don't start putting in there a bunch of bullshit. I'm talking to you young people. Don't start going on about, we need to have a right to a house. Dude, you then obligate somebody to build the house for you. Bullshit. That's complete fucking bullshit. You do not have a right to my labor, okay, or anybody else's labor. You have the right to build your own house. That's fine. You go right ahead and do so, but you don't have a right to obligate somebody else to do that for you. Well, I have a right to an education. The fuck you do. You have the right to go out into the world and educate yourself, like I did, right? You know, those of us out here are autodidact. You know, autodidact, I think is how they say that. Anyway, autodidactic. Anyway, been a while. Anyway, but that's just it. You do, you know, have the right to go do that and stuff, but you don't have the right to obligate somebody else to give you an education. There's no obligation there. You can't do that. That's not how rights work. When you do things like that, you then have to create a system that gives that to you. And the problem is that governments don't have anything. Governments are broke. Everything a government has, it has to first either borrow it, print it, or steal it. That's it. That's all they can do. So I would suggest that you stop, don't put a bunch of rights in there. In fact, actually, just why don't you tweak it a tiny bit and just do something like, hey, you're not, you know, government shall not, you know, let private tech companies inhibit free speech. You can do something like that. Or just change, you know, again, just slight changes here and there. Fine tuning is what you would call that. Okay? So rather than try and scrap everything, because if you try and scrap everything and say, okay, well, we want to have our dream civilization, you're never going to get that. You're not going to get utopia. You will never get utopia, not on this planet. And I would also submit to you, by the way, you don't want utopia. In fact, I guarantee you, you don't want a perfect world. I guarantee you don't. Not because of your actions and not because of any kind of weird matrix nonsense. No. I'm telling you, you don't want that. That would be the definition of hell. Believe it or not. There's actually a whole Twilight Zone episode that covers this. You do not want perfection in your life. You do not. That would be your undoing. You would go absolutely insane to have perfection in your life. Now, of course, you don't want to have the extreme opposite, but at the same time, you got to be somewhere in the middle. Okay, that's what it takes. So no, you don't. So stop thinking in terms of utopia and start thinking in terms of like, man, you know, how about I just be left alone and, you know, just don't take all the shit that I've worked for, right? And then you can start putting yourself in the position of like, well, maybe I should do some more work. Yeah, maybe you should then. The thing is that when you create a distortion in the economy, again, this entire channel for 3 years now, I've been talking about this. I've been trying to explain, particularly young people, that what you're seeing is a distortion. You're seeing a distortion of the economy. What is the economy? The economy is just people. And you're seeing a huge distortion with the people because it's fucking with their head. The reason it's messing with their minds is because they're working harder than they've ever worked, making more dollars they've ever made, and they're going backward in lifestyle. That's because of the monetary policy. It's because of monetary inflation. And it's because of a third party involving themselves in the money. You fix the money, you fix almost all the like virtually everything gets fixed after that, if you do that. Like I said, I know this is a long conversation, but it's a long conversation that needs to be had. And it's a conversation that isn't being had by enough people yet, right? I mean, and hopefully people will start doing it, and then I can just go away. You know, I mean, because I don't get anything from this, right? I mean, aside from, you know, a couple $100 here and there, you know, from like the social media platforms and everything. But even that isn't really considered a job, by the way. I think if anybody who's relying on that, you're relying on somebody else to pay you. And they can change the rules whenever they want. They do all the time. Every time I turn around, TOS is changing, or this calculation is changing. So you're not even really a business owner in that sense. You don't even really have any control over your cost structure, right? Because you don't. You have no idea how much you're going to make on a video or on some social media post or something like that. So something to consider. But I mean, then I can go away and I can go do other stuff. But in the meantime, I'm doing this to try and help people to learn to think about this kind of stuff and start thinking. In other words, act with a bit more caution, right? I'm okay if you want to like replace all these fucking people that have been destroying the country. Dude, fucking have at it, man. We can take care of that in about 5 days. Probably wouldn't even take that long. It probably get it done in about 5-6 hours. It would not take long.